The year is 1912, and the small town of Villisca is quiet. Its streets empty, its homes dark. The only sounds are the faint rustling of leaves in the summer breeze and the occasional chirp of crickets. Inside a modest white farmhouse on East 2nd Street, 8 people are fast asleep. They have no idea that death is already inside their home, moving silently from room to room. This is not a ghost story or a work of fiction. This is real. A massacre so brutal, so senseless, that it would leave an entire town, and eventually an entire nation, gripped by fear and haunted by questions that would never be answered. This is the story of the Villisca Axe Murders. June 9th, 1912. A Sunday filled with joy and community for the Moore family. 43-year-old Josiah, his wife Sarah, who is 39 years old, and their 4 children, Herman, Mary Catherine, Arthur, and Paul, attend a Children's Day program at their local Presbyterian church, which they had organized. It was a fun-filled Sunday with lots to eat and drink, while the children in the community sang hymns that was enjoyed by all. Joining them that evening were 2 young girls, 12 years old Lena Stillinger and her younger sister Ina, who was just 8. The Stillinger sisters had been invited to spend the night at the Moore home after the event, because it was too late to return to their own house on the outskirts of town. The group returned to the Moore home around 9:30 p.m. The house was lively as they settled in for the night, children laughing, parents chatting. But eventually, one by one, they all went to bed. As the clock ticked past midnight, the house fell into a deep slumber. But unbeknownst to them, death had already entered their home, moving silently from room to room. While they all lay asleep, an intruder entered the Moore home. It's unclear how they got in, perhaps through an unlocked door or an open window. But what is clear is that this person came prepared to kill. They brought no weapon of their own. Instead, they used Josiah Moore's own axe, which had been left outside in the yard. The killer began in Josiah and Sarah's bedroom on the 2nd floor. Josiah was struck first, his face obliterated by repeated blows from the blunt side of the axe. His injuries were so severe that his eyes were completely destroyed. Sarah was next, killed in much the same way as she lay beside her husband. The killer then slowly made his way to the children's rooms. Herman, Mary Catherine, Arthur, and Paul were all murdered in their beds. The brutality was unimaginable. Each child was struck multiple times with such force that their skulls were crushed. The intruder finally descended to the 1st floor where Lena and Ina Stillinger were sleeping in the guest bedroom. Lena woke up and in the blinds of her sleep engaged in a defensive struggle with the killer, but her little arms were overpowered by the killer, leaving defensive wounds on her arms. Her body was found partially exposed, leading some investigators to speculate about a possible sexual motive for her murder, though no evidence of assault was ever confirmed. Ina was killed without resistance. By dawn, 8 lives had been extinguished in one of the most horrific ways imaginable. The next morning, their neighbor Mary Peckham noticed something unusual. The Moore household was eerily quiet, normally bustling with activity by early morning, children playing outside or Josiah tending to chores. The house seemed lifeless. Concerned, Mary made his way to the Moore house and knocked on the door, but received no answer. She tried opening it, but found it locked. Growing more uneasy by the minute, Mary called Josiah's brother, Ross Moore, for help. Ross arrived shortly after with a spare key and let himself into the house. What he found inside would haunt him for the rest of his life. The first room he entered was the guest bedroom, where the Stillinger sisters lay lifeless under blood-soaked sheets. Having been greeted with this sight of horror, Ross, in a state of panic, called the police. When investigators arrived at the scene, they uncovered a nightmare. Every member of the household had been bludgeoned to death while they slept. The walls were spattered with blood, with pieces of bone, and flesh clung to ceilings from the force of each blow. Strangely, mirrors throughout the house had been covered with cloths, a detail that baffled investigators and added an eerie layer to an already horrifying crime scene. The killer had also placed garments over some of the victims' faces, as if trying to hide what they had done. Even more chilling, the murderer appeared to have lingered in the house after committing these atrocities. A plate of uneaten food was found on a table in the kitchen alongside a bowl filled with bloody water where they had washed their hands. The Villisca Axe Murders sent shockwaves through Iowa and beyond. Investigators worked tirelessly to identify a suspect, but were met with dead ends at every turn. Several suspects emerged over time. Frank F. Jones, a local businessman who had once employed Josiah Moore at his farm equipment store. Their relationship soured when Josiah left to start his own business, allegedly taking customers with him. Some believed Jones hired someone to carry out the murders out of revenge. The second suspect was William Mansfield, a suspected serial killer who was linked to similar axe murders in other states. His modus operandi bore chilling similarities to the Villisca crime, yet no concrete evidence tied him to the scene. Reverend George Kelly, a traveling preacher who attended the Children's Day program, became another suspect. Known for his erratic behavior and obsession with the case, Kelly confessed to the murders but later recanted. His confession was inconsistent, and he was eventually acquitted after 2 trials due to lack of evidence. Despite these leads and even modern forensic techniques, the case remains unsolved over 100 years later, leaving a haunting mystery in its wake. The murders sent shockwaves through Villisca, a town where everyone knew each other. Fear gripped the community, with residents locking their doors and suspecting neighbors. The sense of safety that once defined this small town was shattered. Today, the Villisca Axe Murder House stands as both a historical landmark and one of America's most haunted locations. Visitors report hearing disembodied voices echoing through its halls, children laughing or crying when no one else is there. Doors open and close on their own. Objects move inexplicably. Some even claim to feel an oppressive energy as if reliving that horrific night. For those brave enough, overnight stays are offered at the house, a chance to experience its chilling atmosphere firsthand. Over the years, various theories and investigations have emerged, including modern forensic analysis. Yet, the case remains officially unsolved, adding to its mystique. The Villisca Axe Murders have inspired countless books, documentaries, and paranormal investigations, cementing their place in American true crime history. This story remains one of America's most infamous unsolved crimes, a dark stain on history that continues to captivate true crime enthusiasts and paranormal investigators alike. Was it an act of revenge, a random killing spree, or something even more sinister? We may never know what truly happened inside that small white house on June 9, 1912. But one thing is certain: its story will haunt us forever. If you enjoyed this story and want more, kindly support us by subscribing to this channel and join us as we delve into the shadows of history.